Good morning, everyone. We're delighted to be supporting this session on planning and transport, and in the next few minutes it's my objective to give you an overview of Scotland's national planning framework. And the National Planning Framework is Scotland's spatial plan. It looks 25 to 30 years in advance. It's a defining characteristic of Scotland's planning system. It's also the spatial expression of the government's economic strategy. And it sets out essentially where we expect to see development and future investment over key areas. It brings together all of our central government policies and the spatial implications of those over a wide range of areas: the economy, development, regeneration, energy, environment, climate change, transport, and digital. And it's about Scotland as a place both now and in the future. It's essential that we join up centrally in the formation of government policy, particularly when we're considering fundamental issues like climate change and the future. We'll be starting work on our next national planning framework early in the new year. And so this is a good time to be starting to think about the key international issues and the context for which we're working within. And context for a small country on the edge of Europe is extremely important. We want to make the best use of our resources. We want to connect internally to our islands and beyond. We want to look outwards and ensure that we can take account of all the key considerations going forward and good practice. The National Planning Framework, like other spatial plans in Scotland, is a very inclusive process. It follows engagement across a whole stakeholder range across the country. And people are at the heart of the system. And we want to involve people and their interests across the country. These illustrations here are just some from hundreds of the submissions we've had from members of the public across the country who want to set out where they think the strategic changes need to take place and what they think are the national developments that our national planning framework should take account of. So that inclusive approach includes the parliamentary involvement, where there is consideration and debate before ministers take final decisions. Going forward, we would want to include that inclusive approach as we develop any future plans. And the National Planning Framework is also heavily evidence-based. Mapping plays a key part in that. And it recognises that Scotland's a very diverse country with different places that have different pressures and different opportunities. These maps here just show some of the issues that we've looked at. They show our environmental assets, protected areas and deep peatland, essential for considering climate change. Our opportunities for on- and offshore renewables and the associated grid connections. Population change and where housing completions are taking place across the country. Our ports and our harbours, essential for both investment associated with marine renewables and for international connectivity. The MPF provides a strategy which responds to the different challenges and opportunities for our cities, towns, rural areas, our coasts and our islands. It covers strategic issues, but also very local issues. Our cities and towns and our rural areas face different pressures and issues. In Scotland, we've got 7 city regions where the population is relatively concentrated. Most of our population live in the cities and towns within the wider city regions. 6 are shown here: Aberdeen, Stirling, Dundee, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Inverness. We also have Perth. And the cities act as our key drivers for the economy. Each has a unique character, a strong heritage, unique economy and a distinctive identity. But there are some shared challenges as well. All are located alongside rivers or river estuaries, are accessible by public transport, but have limited levels of walking and cycling, and experience road congestion in places in a relatively dense built environment. The challenge for the National Planning Framework going forward is to recognise the assets of each of our city regions and to understand how each of our cities and towns needs to change to help address the climate change challenge. Our rural areas are places to live as well as places to visit and places to invest in our key industries. Around 1 million people live in Scotland's rural areas. These are diverse. They have major potential to reduce carbon emissions and helping us to adapt to future climate change. Some are accessible, close to towns and cities, but therefore under development pressure. Others, including our islands and the North and West mainland, can be much more fragile and remote. We have a very high-quality environment and many national and international environmental designations, but these are also key to our food and drink industry, to tourism and to energy. And the challenge for the National Planning Framework is creating a plan which can help to sustain all of our rural communities, the economy and the environment. Scotland has ambitious targets to reduce carbon emissions and to address climate change. We also have significant resources in hydro, wind and wave. The National Planning Framework sets out policies in 4 different areas, and this first one is Scotland as a low-carbon place. The strategy map shows that there will be opportunities across Scotland as a whole for the low-carbon economy. Many of our ports and harbours will be well placed to support the low-carbon economy, but we need to ensure that we can support future carbon capture and storage networks. We will also continue to see onshore wind, and we expect to see repowering of many of our existing wind farm sites. But a planned approach is needed to ensure that development largely avoids our nationally and internationally protected areas. Continuing development and ensuring the resilience of our grid connections internationally to our islands and to onshore connections to offshore renewables will be essential. Scotland as a successful, sustainable place is essentially around the quality of the place that Scotland is and its constituent communities. This shows where our cities are, how they work together as a network. It also shows a network of enterprise areas and key regeneration areas of national importance in the Central Belt and further north. But overall, there is that focus on quality of place. We want to be clear that Scotland is a great place to invest in low-carbon business. Employment and resilience varies across Scotland. When we prepare the next National Planning Framework, we'll be looking to how we can build on the strengths and assets of all of our areas so that they have a successful and sustainable future, that our growth is inclusive, and that in key areas we can coordinate action. A big issue is the delivery of housing, delivery and the quality of housing, and the supporting infrastructure that's needed across the country, in transport, in education, in soft infrastructure, but ensuring that the quality of the places that we create can support people's health and their well-being. Scotland as a natural, resilient place underlines the fact that our environment is an asset for the economy, as well as a key ingredient in the quality of our lives. The National Planning Framework shows a strategy where we respect and enhance our protected areas. We want to make the most of our high-quality environment and to make it accessible to visitors in a sustainable way, for example, through the network of walking and cycling and scenic areas. These are set out as national developments. And this area in the middle, that circular area in the Central Belt, represents the Central Scotland Green Network. And this area aims to improve the environment and to support investment as well as quality of life. Biodiversity networks, wider climate change objectives, such as woodland expansion, are already an important and a successful element in this. Another national development is the Metropolitan Glasgow Strategic Drainage Plan, a major investment in the drainage infrastructure of our largest city. Cathy will explain more about that in her presentation. And also we want to ensure, through the National Planning Framework, that we can see stronger environmental mitigation in the Forth. Questions for the next National Planning Framework will be how we can build on this strategy to make the best use of our land and our environmental assets to deliver the ecosystem services that a low-carbon Scotland as a whole needs. Finally, Scotland as a connected place underlines just what a connected Scotland might look like. Physically connected through our ports, our rail, our transport infrastructure, but also digitally, where connections in the rural environment are essential elements that we need to see brought forward to enhance the living experience that people have in rural areas and also to support the rural economy. We've several national developments that reflect the continuing importance of freight networks, of ports, of airports to maintain and build our links with the rest of the world. A few final thoughts here. Inclusive growth can be supported by spatial planning, nationally, strategically, and locally. Planning covers many of the themes that we'll be discussing over the next few days. Planning has to work at all scales, from global to local. It's critical that we understand and play to the strengths both of urban and rural areas. It's key that we can communicate with wider interests around the importance of coordinating investment in infrastructure and in areas of change. And this is the beginning of a conversation as we approach a new spatial plan for Scotland. So as we do that, we'll look to engage with the international community on thoughts, on ideas, on long-term spatial planning. And we look forward to working with you in that journey. Thank you.